All right, everybody. Um, Welcome to Chalk City, USA. I'm trying. I'm really trying to do something other than play San Francisco. The only thing I was able to do is I'm going to limit my exposure to 60% of any player. That's like the best I can do. Oh, look at this. Do you pay attention to all the gaps in your stack lineups? No. Well, because Scott, what I do, well, I use SaberSim to help construct these things, so I'm usually going to get good correlation. I think that I don't want to speak for Bobby on this, but I think Bobby would say that he pays great attention to the gaps in stacks on purpose. You know, especially in situations like tonight, where everybody that's really lazy, especially on a Friday, is going to set their settings. All right, give me 1 to 5 San Francisco, and then whatever. Bobby's actually going to take good care to force probably gaps in the stacks. So yes, and we both pay attention to them in different ways.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think that, and I would say that on FanDuel, I actually think the correlation of having guys not necessarily in order, but like no more than one gap between your 4-man stacks is not a bad thing to do just generally as a rule of thumb. But especially on DraftKings, doing a 1-5-8 mini stack is completely fine, especially, and it really depends on the power. And I would use ISO as the determining factor, the power of those hitters, because you don't want to play a guy like we mentioned the other day, who was the second baseman for the Cubs,
Madrigal,
who has hit a home run once every like 600 at bats, so he's not going to hit a home run every year even. And you don't want to play a guy like that in a 3-man stack with a gap. You'd want to have him surrounded by guys you're playing if you're going to use a guy like that. If that makes sense.
The probably the most productive thing I did with respect to tonight's slate is deciding not to play the big buy-in.
What is the matter with you?
Yeah, that was clearly the move. That was the sharp play tonight. That's going to prove to be. So now in before Rhodey identifies one of my MME builds that would have won the 888. That finished 173rd in the lottery.
No, thanks by the way to Scott. That's pretty. I can't believe you're not playing it. You know you're would have won it or something.
I'll never know. I wouldn't. I'll play the 4-max. I'll play the 4-max, and that's $20,000. I'll be more than happy to take that.
Okay, fair enough. I'll tell you what. So what I'm doing is I don't have a full Giant stack anywhere, except for I do on FanDuel have a 4-man stack of the Giants in my big buy-in. Combined with the team that I think will be a little bit lower owned, and partly we'll have to worry about the weather, is Texas. So trying to figure that out. But I do like, I do think I also don't think I have any lineups that doesn't have anybody from San Francisco. So I have a lot of 2-man, a lot of 3-mans, and a 4-man or so on DraftKings, but mostly it's going to be 2 and 3-man stack, 2 and 3-man pieces. And really it's the value that's appealing. It's not even like, just that they're, the stack's going to score 1 million runs. I just like the value. The value guys are a little too hard to ignore, but you can do plenty of different things. Like my main stacks on DraftKings tonight are the Cardinals, the Dodgers, the Padres more as a 4-man stack, as you got a guy who doesn't necessarily, he doesn't walk anybody, Espino. So it's always frustrating to stack against him. He's one of the lowest walk rates of any starters in the major leagues. And I would rather take the power upside. So I would want to be playing, maybe Machado, Soto, Drury or something like that as a 3-man or something like that. I have a lot of San Diego exposure. Again, not as many full 5 stacks. The full 5 stacks I have the most of are the Rockies and Cardinals, and followed by the Dodgers. And the Dodgers is just simply because you have a good pitcher on the other side, but he's amazing against lefties, and he's really struggles with righties. They have a ton of power against him, and he gets really wild. And that just seems like a recipe for disaster against the Dodgers. So that's what I'm doing for my main stacks. But I will be using the pieces of San Francisco to balance it out. And I also have some stacks where I'm leaving some money on the table too.
The other thing you could do is you could fade You could full fade the rain game if you want.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, you could full fade Houston, Atlanta too, just on the chance that gets rained out too.
Yeah. Well, I
That's
don't think that one's as likely, but
it's not
from what
likely.
yeah, it doesn't look like it's that bad. Um, but the pop-ups in Atlanta are really hard to predict. So
Yeah,
you're probably looking at a delay more than anything. I don't think they're gonna cancel that one, but it's kind of a shame because I really like it's so funny because I don't always read Cheese's article, and I like to read it sometimes after I've made my decisions, and literally writing like almost the exact same things that I was saying earlier today. Like the Buxton Miranda is like the best two-man like two off because you have an extreme you have a guy who gives up extreme power in a lefty that to guys who have extreme power and that no one's really going to be looking at all that much. Perez doesn't. It's not that he gives up extreme power. He gives up a lot of hard contact, and the power upside for them. You have a ground ball pitcher in Perez. The fly ball pitcher tends to even out, and those balls end up getting out over the fence. Same thing reverse, where you have a ground ball pitcher and fly ball hitter. A fly ball pitcher and guys who hit ground balls. You're going to see more line drives in those situations. So that's sort of my thinking about. I do like that I don't have any full stacks of Minnesota, and I do have some of Texas on FanDuel, but I will be happy to jump off of that as soon as I get the word, after I get out of here from Roth, because I don't really want to mess with any game that's borderline, but I like the ownership a lot. And I think Texas is one of those teams that's getting overlooked that could kind of explode tonight.
I think that I think that Nola is somebody you could play. Trying to do anything except for McClanahan, Snell, San Francisco, right? So
Yeah.
I think Nola is somebody you could play. Another one, again, I'm coming back to. Again, he doesn't strike anybody out, but just because he's going to be low owned, and maybe like Tyler Anderson or something like that.
Yeah.
It's really not a good play, but I mean, people are going to play Singer and Gausman, I think, more in that range. And
I don't think they're going to play Gausman more.
You don't think?
No, I would. I'm just going to take a look at the thing. I think Gausman is going to be like really, really low owned, is my guess. Let me just double check what my notes here have and see what they actually. You know what? They've got him pretty similarly owned at about. I'm looking on FanDuel, but that's part of my problem. Yeah. By the way, for what it's worth, I mean, SaberSim still has FanDuel has a Nola at 8% on FanDuel, so I am going to start Nola with my San Francisco Texas thing. Is my current plan.
Me as well. Be careful with Texas, though.
Yeah, I know that's the problem. I know I have to switch up that, but I can switch up that other stack, and that's the one place I can comfortably stack San Francisco. I can't get different enough with my pitching to fully stack them.
Well, you know what? The other thing, by the way, is if in fact you do, play some pitcher early or whatever, that's either, let's say you play a low-owned pitcher that's really smashing,
Mm-hmm.
you could get a little chalkier later if you wanted to. You know what I mean? Or the reverse. If you're not doing so well, then get off all the San Franciscos and then go nuts with those Padres or whoever else.
Right. And the thing about, just to throw this out, Tyler Anderson, like Tyler Anderson's a really good. He's the guy I actually did, and he did end up in one of my two big buy-ins on DraftKings, which I'm debating what to do, whether to go Gauss. I literally leave it. It's 300 on the table. Like I'm just debating between he and Gausman, which means I'll just overweight whichever one I don't use in my other lineups. But while he doesn't have the obvious strikeout side, it is the best matchup in baseball. Yeah. And he's so consistent that if you bump up a couple of extra strikeouts, 7 innings and 1 run and 6 Ks is probably good enough at his price, because he's not going to, even if they get to him and they hit maybe a couple home runs, even, they're not going to have guys on base the whole game against him. It's just not the way that they just don't have a talented enough offense. I mean, sure, it's baseball, anything can happen, but I'm not going to bet on that. And
I also wanted to stress, by the way, that like you, I'm very heavy on St. Louis.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, for what it's worth, the only extreme hitters umpires on this entire slate are in Pittsburgh and in the St. Louis, Arizona game. So probably worth noting that. I do have a lot of one-off guys that I mentioned Brandon Lau earlier. We were not using Singer. I actually think getting a mini stack of Tampa Bay is absolutely fine, like a little 2 or 3 man, but because you're talking about like 1% owned guys who are facing a guy who, 10 starts ago we would be stacking against. now we love him.
Right.
So I don't mind taking that shot. I love Haniger. I like Buxton.
That's a great play. I don't think anybody's going to remember to play him, you know?
Yeah, and I'm just going to keep riding that one, and until he's more expensive. Yeah, and Goldie's saying he's showing Gaussman at 7.5 on DK, Anderson at like 10. Yeah, that's about what I would have thought. But either way, those are both.
Well, Anderson's got to be an inferior play then, right? I mean, Gaussman's got the much more upside.
The upside, but he's playing the Yankees, and then so it's just what is your risk tolerance? You know what I mean?
Who the hell? Like you were saying, who the hell are the Yankees? I mean, like.
No, and that's a fair argument too. But like they're certainly better than the Marlins. Like
I would imagine. I would imagine.
And I just can't get over the fact that Tyler Anderson he does the same thing every game. He goes 6-7 innings. Sometimes the strikeouts hike up to 6 or 7, to 6 between 6 and 8. Sometimes they're as low as you get the 3 or 4 strikeout games. I just don't see this as being a matchup where he's going to have that 3 or 4 strikeout game, because I think he'll get a couple just because it's Miami. So I think that if you can get a strikeout per inning out of Tyler Anderson, who's a really good real life pitcher. By the way, other years, Tyler Anderson would be like in Cy Young talks. I mean, he's 13-2 with a 2.8.
I know.
He's really good. Also, you get the extra 4 points for the win. I think the Dodgers have an excellent chance at that, obviously. So I think you could be looking at low end. I think you're looking at like 18 fantasy points from him. I think that he's got a chance to get up to the high 20s. But Gaussman is a guy who can get you over in the 30s. So it is a little bit of an interesting dilemma, And
obviously he can get you into the low negatives too, obviously. So
Gaussman could get you negative. That's right. And Anderson is, I mean, I don't want to say there's no way, but I don't think there's a way. I don't think he's had a negative game in years. Even when he pitched in Colorado, he was always a guy who everybody tried to stack against, and it just doesn't work. He's just a good pitcher. Let's see what some other things that I noticed on. So of the Giants, the ones that I have the highest priority on are probably, and it sucks because there is absolutely pinch hit risk for all 3 of the guys I'm going to name. But in the outfield, Yastrzemski, Wade, and Peterson.
Right.
Flores is probably my favorite because I know he'll play the whole game.
Right.
Longoria will play the whole game. So I'm trying to figure out what to do. And then the Brandon Belt, I do have a decent amount of Brandon Belt exposure. But you know what you could do? And people who want to say, oh, Pujols is over the hill, all these things, look at Pujols' numbers versus lefties on a per at bat basis. They're basically the same as Goldschmidt. Like, it's kind of nuts. He may lose.
Pujols is a freaking legend. I mean, he is.
He's awesome. And the thing is, like, against lefties this year, I think he has 8 home runs and 90 at bats. That's awesome. Like, you know what I mean? That's pretty great stuff. So I like, and then I like Rich's question here about Mikolas. Again, the extreme hitters umpire slanted me a little bit, even extra. I do have him in some of my lineups, not my highest buy-ins, but I do think that there's enough upside for him. I just don't know. I mean, it feels weird to play a low strikeout pitcher, and Arizona is they're not a good offense, but they don't strike out a ton. It's just not that great of a. I don't know. I'm just sort of stuck on that one. I would rather go for the upside. And Mikolas and Anderson are basically the same type of pitcher. It's just the matchup is so much more premium for Anderson than it is for Mikolas. But they're both fun. I mean, Eric Johnson popped on in saying that Pujols is going to hit a home run tonight. I made sure to get a couple Pujols things because I'll tell you what, the obvious play is Goldschmidt home run. I'm going to say Nolan Arenado also hits a home run. I really like this Cardinals stuff.
Okay.
And I'm afraid that the ownership is going to be higher than what people are projecting. And I'm just going to take a quick look at the updated projections of their ownership. Just because it's a good spot against the kind of guy you want to stack against. And I mean, I don't think everybody's going to, other than Tyler O'Neill, is going to be less than 10%. Weird part about Tyler O'Neill is historically really good against lefties. Hasn't really had the power this year against lefties that anybody in their lineup has. I mean, I think Carlson is better per at bat, home run wise, even than him against lefties. So I'm actually have a little more Carlson than I do O'Neill, but I'm sort of fallen in love a little bit with that Cardinals stack. And even if you're not stacking them, getting some pieces, between Arenado, O'Neill, Goldschmidt, Carlson, and you could throw Edman in the mix. All of those guys, I think, have excellent home run opportunities, and then obviously have Pujols as well. So I think that's interesting. Favorite pitcher on FanDuel is, I mean, the best play is probably Snell. Or I mean, McClanahan has got some issues going on. So I am playing some McClanahan, but he's in one of my big buy-ins, and then he's not in hardly anything else for me. I do think that there's something to worry about a little bit. His velocity's dropped a little bit. The strikeout rate has gone way down. Has had some tough matchups, so you have to factor that in. But I personally am going to use Nola as my main pitcher on FanDuel because of the ownership, and that allows me to play more San Francisco. And Nola is the second lowest strikeout, so second lowest walk pitcher, has the second lowest walk rate in baseball. I've always been obsessed with guys like this in DFS. It used to be, why can't I think of the Yankees Japanese pitcher's name? Hideki. He was like that for me. Like I couldn't not play him because they just constantly work deep into games. They have good strike. They're above average strikeout guys who just don't walk anybody.
Who, Arabu?
What's that? No, I'm talking about Nola.
Oh, you take Hideki Arabu?
No. The pitch, maybe it wasn't. The pitcher. Why can't? I mean, he was there. It's crazy that I can't think of his name right now. He was
for the Dodgers.
No, for the Yankees.
Hideki Arabu.
No.
Oh. Okay.
No. I keep wanting to say Matsuyama.
I'm gonna have to split. Just a couple of announcements real quick. So I'm out tomorrow. The only thing that's if Goldie, if you could do the projections tomorrow, that'd be great for baseball. The MMA projections are up. I'm gonna update them again later tonight, and then we're not gonna have the Xfinity Series stuff tomorrow because I'm not gonna be around to post them when qualifying comes out. But I'll be back tomorrow night, and good luck, everybody.
Good luck, man. Have a good night. And by the way, I meant Tanaka. That's what I meant to say. I got the name wrong.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
All right. Have a good night, Cheats.
Okay.
All right. Should you fade the Giants completely, or is it that too cute is playing? I think that with their value, if you're playing multiple lineups and you're fading them in every lineup, I think you're just doing it wrong. But I think if you're playing, half of your lineups, I think you could exclude them. I don't think that you need to, the ownership is going to be there, but there's no reason they have to go off, which makes me like even the little mini stacks better of the Giants. So I don't mind using them, and you can just supplement them with other teams. Every other stack is going to be pretty spread out. I really like Coors, the Rockies, and I really like the Cardinals. And I think that you can mix in the Giants with those guys. And I think there's like so much talk of the Giants that I actually think that they're gonna be owned like crazy. Don't get me wrong, but it might not be quite what you think it is. It's just everybody's talking about trying to fade them. They haven't had the big game in forever. All this stuff, I don't know. I'm just thinking like maybe some of the sharp people are gonna go a little too overboard on that. I wouldn't make them a 5-man stack. That's my rule for them tonight, and there's really nothing else to it. That's basically all I'm doing to deal with the Giant stuff. Is I'm not going to. Let me just see the ownership I've got here from Sheets because his ownership is the blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean it's going to be higher than it's being projected, but I think it's just playing 2 or 3 of them is completely fine. You don't need to. The name of the game isn't let's do the exact opposite of what everybody's doing. Now it can work in baseball sometimes, but that's not a way that I would approach slates like that. And these people who always say stack or fade cores are just nuts. Like it's just a stupid thing people say. Sandoval is probably so if you're going to play Sandoval, I would definitely play Mikolas ahead of Sandoval. Sandoval is just a wildly erratic guy who you have no idea what to expect anytime he pitches, which is the opposite of Mikolas, who's always almost always going out there and, having a quality start or something like that. So I actually like Mikolas better than I do Sandoval. And I think he'll be lower owned maybe. Sandoval's fine. I personally, I might have him in 1 out of 20 lineups or something like that. Yeah, definitely have some Dodgers love. Cards are chalky as hell. Eric, you got to tell me what you're looking at because you read things, you say stuff like that sometimes, and then I look at the guys and they're like 2% and all this stuff, and I'm like, what are we talking about? They're not going to be 2% in this case, but what are you talking about? The cards are chalky as hell. What does chalky mean to you? I want to understand that. Do you think anybody above 5% is chalky? I just don't get it. Let's see. And I do like the Dodgers for what it's worth. And I think the Dodgers are one of the teams that warrant, if you're going to play them, you could definitely go full stack. You have a bad Miami bullpen with an erratic pitcher to righties, and the Dodgers have enough righties in the lineup that can get to them. I also could see it going really badly. But I wouldn't be optimistic about the Dodgers going nuts and being the winning team on the slate. But that's, they don't need to be, except for what X number of one out of every 10, they probably are right there. So I would just go in with my expectations a little low. Okay, that's fair enough. 10 to 15%. I don't have any Cardinal over 10% being projected. I think they're going to be more popular than that. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know. You know, I'm currently looking at the best projection systems, and they have nothing. They have no Cardinal above 10% where I'm looking. So, all right. What else is there? And I'm going to jump over to see what Ross says about the weather, because I do have a little interest in that Texas-Minnesota game. But I think I'm going to bounce in a minute. So if there's any last thoughts, let's see. Yeah, I know we do this all the time. Everybody talks things up, and then we'll see how many play them. But I do like the card. It doesn't matter. Like, I like the Cardinals either way. It's a good spot. Like, we can't just go, okay, well, we can't play this team because they've got guys who are 5% or 8% owned or whatever. And for what it's worth, I do think some of the Cardinals will be more popular than that. But you got to remember, most people are going to be putting Giants in almost all the spots you want to put Cardinals. Card stack, Tony A says a 6%. I don't buy that number. That feels like a Roto Grinders number to me. I'm not sure I fully believe that, but I think that it could end up being right. Mick tonight, yeah, I think McKenzie and McClanahan are completely legitimate. I do like McKenzie as a contrarian-ish play. I like a contrarian. If you want to go, if I was gonna make a giant stack, I would play McKenzie with Gaussman and just get way off the board with it like that. Eric, you think it's going to be higher than 6%? Because if they're 10 to 15%, you think the whole stack is going to be more than 10 to 15% owned? That doesn't seem logical to me. I don't think that's right. I think that actually may be close. Like, it probably is going to end up around 8, so you can split the difference. We're talking about very, very fractional points here. But outside of on a slate like this, outside of Coors, I really don't think you should be factoring ownership in that massively, personally. The one thing I want to say before I get out of here, the team, I do have some Boston stacks, and I am a little bit afraid of not having the Angels because I don't want to spread out too thin. But I think this is a game where you could see the Angels have a big game. Awesome. Okay, well, I mean, it's fair enough. 6% is possible. I think it actually is probably not too much lower than I would have thought. I would think like 8%. So it's not. We're splitting hairs here. So I'm sorry to waste the time on that, but I think that they're fine, and I don't think you have to just get completely off of a team that's going to be 6 or 8 or even 10%. As a stack, because you can stack that team differently, and you can also do it as a 4-man. All right, I'm going to be out of here. Good luck, everybody. I hope you guys take it down, and let's see some screenshots in Discord. Everybody have a great weekend. Appreciate y'all.